Hey everybody, Whitney LaBrie here, and this week I thought I'd start us off in spooky season with something not that spooky really. I am kind of in love with all of these pastel fall colors this year. Now, I'm a follower of an ungodly amount of fall and Halloween Facebook groups. And I came across this adorable photo right here. Now, I don't know the artist on this, it was just randomly posted, but I loved it so much. And the first thing I thought was, I need this in my life. So I'm gonna use this as my inspiration for today's little project, and I'm gonna mix up beautiful pastel fall that I love. We're gonna put them both together, and we're gonna make a little tiny Halloween window. This is the window backdrop that I'll be using for today's project. I bought this at Hobby Lobby for $3.99 over the summer. But let's say that you don't have this piece, but you want this piece. If I didn't have this, I would be making this out of foam board or even out of a cardboard box. So even if you can't get yourself one of these little windows, those would be the two materials that I would suggest using and just drawing it and cutting it out. I'd like to create two shelves on this window. One will be at the top and hold those little spice jars and maybe a couple other little things that we saw in the photo. And then the base will be also a shelf, but it will also have the purpose of helping the piece stand up on its own. And then I have this extra little wood dowel here, and I'm going to cut that down so that it would be added support for the top shelf and also add a little cute detail to it too. For the base color for the window, I'd like to use this color called Ocean Water. I really like this teal color. It is a little too bright, so I am going to soften it quite a bit by adding some white paint to it and mixing that up, and then just dry brushing the paint right onto the wood. I am leaving a little of the original unfinished wood exposed just so this could give more of a distressed, shabby look. I don't want it to look too fresh. We want it to have a little bit of age. And then once I've added my teal, my lightened pastel teal color, I am going to take some of my white paint and go ahead and go over the entire piece, except for that bottom shelf, of course. Again, just to add a little bit more distressing and some shabby so that some of that blue is coming through, but it's not overwhelming the piece. For the bottom shelf, I do want to make it look like a wooden shelf, and I want it to have some of the raw wood exposed striations. So I'm taking my regular dark brown and I'm going to mix in just a little bit of white, and I'm not going to mix it thoroughly so that it gives kind of a marbled look. And I'm going to go ahead and paint that on so that the paint isn't fully mixed. Then while still wet, I'm going to take some dark brown and just run my brush through, not mixing, but that will give the look of wood. In the picture, we see some really cute pumpkins in the background, and I would also like to add pumpkins to my display here, but I don't have the space to do a full round pumpkin, so I am going to use a cardboard flap here, and I'm just going to draw out a few pumpkins and see how many will work in the background. I'm thinking 3 to 4 pumpkins maybe. So I'm going to go to cut those out. You can see them here, and then I'll be using some pastels here. I've got this bubblegum pink. Again, it's a little bright. I'll be mixing white with it. I've got a lilac color here, and then I've got a little bit of a burgundy color to the back that I may add in just to add a couple tones to the pumpkin, maybe around the edges. And then, of course, what I'm not showing, but you'll see in a little bit, a cream color also. So I'm going to go ahead and do a pastel pink pumpkin. I'll do my purple pumpkin. And then I'm going to do a cream pumpkin, and I'll probably add a little bit of brown to that, just again for adding a little bit of tone and texture, and then adding some green stems to the top of those. And then those are my pumpkins. I was going to do additional one, but I don't think I'm going to have room for them. All right, so in the photo, we also see some hanging herbs or floral in the background, some dried flowers. So I thought we'd go ahead, let me get out my garden stash here and see what I have. I probably have a few items in here I could definitely use. So I think I found a few things that will most definitely work. And here they are. I've got some of these mossy pieces, some dried floral. I think if I wrap some twine around these, that will work. And then I can add a few colors like this lavender and a couple other things. So let's see what that looks like. Now I've got my little wraps, and I think 3 will be enough. Let me just add them on here. And then if we need more, we can add them now. We can make a couple extra. But I think that's going to work. Now let me go ahead and add those and then my little pumpkins. And that's what we have so far. I don't know what it is about Halloween time that the spice jars just start coming out in the multitudes, right? Because we have to have all our ingredients for our magic spells, and there's no difference here. So I am going to grab a couple of real spices from my cabinet. I've got some parsley and some rosemary. I've got a couple little clear jars with corks, and then I have these leftover labels here that I used in my practical magic room. I think last year I did that room, so I've got a few extra here that I'm going to use today. So here I've filled them and I've glued on my labels, and I think 2 will be enough. Again, we can always add. All right, and let's get to my favorite part of this entire project, the kettle. If I was going to do the kettle just like the photo, this would already be perfect. The color is perfect, but I am trying to stay away from our traditional Halloween colors and do more of those fall pastel colors, so I will paint it. But let's go ahead and start by creating the steam that is coming out of that kettle. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use this wired thread right here. And I'm taking my toothpick and I'm just going to wrap some of that thread around the toothpick so that I can get these little curlicues. I use toothpicks, I feel like, almost every day in my crafts. I don't know if I've ever actually used a toothpick for my teeth, which is weird, but I've certainly used them for other things. So you can see how that's coming along there with that little curlicue. And I'm going to do about 3. I think 3 will give me a good base to create the look of steam coming out of this little kettle. All right, and there they are all together. I've glued the 3 together, kind of twisted them and added a little white glue just to hold them in place. Now what I want them to do is I want them to look like they're coming out of that little kettle there. So I'm just holding it, but this is basically what I want that to look like. So I'm going to use my super glue and just put a little dab. I'm going to spray some activator onto that super glue so that it will hold almost immediately. This is life-changing, by the way. If you haven't used super glue with activator, I'm telling you, this is the only way to go when you need something to hold in place almost right away. You just have to be really accurate. So I put my super glue, I'm going to spray, and then I'm just going to hold that piece in place for about 12 seconds. And then voila, there it is. A kettle with faux steam. Now to take that to the next level, I am going to add a little bit of my ultimate white glue, and then I'm going to take a cotton ball here and really thin out that cotton. I'm going to start applying small, thin wisps to my little curlicues. Really want to play with that until it looks like a really nice plume of steam is coming out of that kettle. And then I'm going to grab my toothpick again and I'm just going to kind of shape it and make sure that it looks like how I want it to look and kind of play with it till I'm satisfied. There we go. And I feel like that looks really good. So to make the little ghosts, all I did was grab my white polymer clay, and there are 4 ghosts there. There's 3 that are already in the little plume of steam, and then there's one like kind of trying to pop out of the little kettle spout. So I made 3 of the little ghosts and then one little squirt of a ghost. And that'll be the one that'll be in the little spout portion. And then I'm just going to, again, take my tacky glue and add my glue to the cotton. And this is really tricky because that cotton wants to come with that tacky glue when you pull away. So just be aware of that. I probably should have put the glue on the ghost first, but 2020, right? So we're going to go ahead and add my little ghosties. Once the ghosts are on there and all in place, I went ahead and took my thin point permanent marker and I added some little ghosty eyes. And I could have done that too before I glued them down. So whatever floats your boat. So really, I did a lot of things backwards with this kettle. Like I should have painted the kettle first, but honestly, when when I first was making this, I kind of liked the color as is, and I thought maybe I could get away with it, but really it stood out in a weird way against the other colors. So now that it's together, I did decide to go ahead and paint it in this really pretty teal, and I am using my Tester's metal paint here, and I'm going to go ahead and paint that in teal. And so we'll take a look at that at the end, and I'll show you what that looks like once it's all dry here in a little bit. But moving on, I have this already glued together plastic teacup on saucer. This is a Bond plastic set here, and I want to make it look like there's some tea or coffee in it. And so I'm going to just take a little bit of my brown paint and add that to the center of the cup. I'm using enough where it will fill the cup a little bit. When it dries, of course, the water will dissipate and it won't look like a full cup of coffee, but being that it's painted, it will still come across as being a nice full cup of coffee. You could do a resin mix inside if you wanted to do that, but I'm okay with it being how it is. And then I'm going to take my burgundy Sharpie and just add a couple little details. I'm going to color the ridge of it, adding a little bit of fall color there. And also I'm going to add a few little cute dots to it also, just to add a little bit more interest and detail. Once the marker is dry, but not the paint, I am going to take just a little waif here of my cotton ball again. I'm going to add that to the cup, and because the paint is still wet, that little bit of cotton will actually adhere directly to that paint, and I won't really need to use any glue. Kind of gonna play with it a little bit so that it does actually look like a nice hot steamy cup of boo tea. Yes, I said it here. And of course that's why you subscribe to my channel, because of these high quality jokes that I'm putting out on a weekly basis. Now let's add a couple little sweet treats. We see in the photo that they do have some cookies and cupcakes, so I thought it would be fun if we added just a few. Again, we don't have a huge amount of space here that we're working with, but just an added few little treats. It wouldn't do anybody any harm. So I'm going to just take my little plate here. This is a little ceramic plate. I'm going to just add a couple little details here again with my little marker, my permanent marker, and I'll set that down to dry. And then I just want to make one cupcake. I think one cupcake will work here. So I'm just going to add a little bit of cream, and that was going to be my little top, my little icing top. And I'm basically just shaping it like a little tiny white chocolate morsel here that you see in that bowl in that picture, but we're just going to do one. And then what I'm going to do is I do have a mold here. I wanted to use it. They almost look like Reese's Pieces molds, but really I could just shape the base of the cupcake very easily also into a little chocolate base, my little chocolate base, and then I will put those two together and bake them together. For my cookies, I'm just going to make some little chocolate spheres here, little tiny ones, add them to my baking tile and just press down on them to make them round like a little cookie. And then I'm going to take, I don't have pink polymer clay. By the way, this is all polymer clay that I'm using. I don't have any pink polymer clay, so I'm just mixing a little raspberry and a little white color together to get some pink. And then I'll make little tiny spheres also, but this time I'm going to shape them. I'm going to try to shape them as much as I can like little footballs. So when I press them down on top of those little chocolate cookies, they have more of a pumpkin shape, like a little oval. And then that's what they're going to kind of look like. And my pinks really turned more into circles than ovals, but that's okay. It's really not that important. And then after I bake them, I will take my Sharpie again and go ahead and add a little pumpkin face to the top. And then we'll go ahead and plate those, and I'll glue them down using my ultimate glue again, my white ultimate glue. And there's my cookies. Yay, pumpkin cookies. All right, so let's get back to our window. Now, I would like to do a backing on it. It isn't really necessary, but I thought it would be fun to draw some spider webs on it and add just a little bit more interest to the back portion. So I'm going to use these plastic clear lucite pieces that I have. And again, I bought these originally at Michael's. They come in a pack of a whole bunch of them, and I think they were maybe like $10 for a whole bunch, and I've used them periodically through different projects that I've done here on the channel. So I'm just going to cut out a little piece of that, and you can see the reflection here in the lighting. And then I just took my black permanent marker, and I drew out some spider webs and had a little dangle spider too, and then I'll just glue that to the back, and there you go. Easy peasy, adding that little bit of detail. Okay, everybody, and now we are basically finished with the project. Now we just need to put everything together. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that for you right now. I have added a few other little accessories from my stash to fill in some of the areas, and then add a couple of the accessories that we also saw in the photo, like candlesticks and books and things like that. And then I did add a little bit more moss and other little fillers in the nooks and crannies just to give it more of a full look. And so I hope that you enjoy. The other thing that I did was when I went to add the spoon, I added a little bit of my museum wax, and when I laid it down, the spoon kind of sat up, and I thought, oh man, I love the way that looked, and I had kind of a magical feel that went with our little boo tea. So I just left the spoon sitting up as though if somebody was magically about to use it to stir their tea. And so there it is, everybody. Our little project is completed. I hope that you enjoyed this for our first project for the Halloween season. I know that many of you are saying to yourself, Whitney, when are you going to get back to the dollhouse? Well, guess what? You're in luck, because next week will be the first installment of what I'm calling Polter, as in poltergeist, because we will be going back to the dollhouse. I will be building the poltergeist children's room, and I promise it's going to be fun. It will have some action, and I think that you're gonna love it. So thank you so much, you guys, for watching this week. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss Polter coming up next week. I hope that you have a great rest of your week. Thanks for hanging out with me, and remember, in this crazy life, it is the little things that matter. Bye.